We spent the past couple of years in a crazy hot market. Louisville home sales decline as demand outpaces supply. Effective communication is at the core of any situation. If you master these two ideas, you'll have a chance of being successful at residential real estate marketing. I think you need to be looking for investment opportunities that move the needle. The market will never crash if demand exceeds supply. This is what I've been telling you all along.
This is the Jay Pitt Show. And we're back, folks. Welcome back to the Jay Pitt Show. Ryan, happy Derby Day, sir.
Yeah, happy Derby Day.
Well, I don't guess it's actually Derby Day because obviously we're not live here, but we are aware that we are airing the show here on Derby Day. So happy Derby Day anyway, premature. It's an amazing time of year to be a Louisvillian, to be a Kentuckian. The bluegrass is never bluer than it is on Derby week, right?
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of cool. We're getting to celebrate Derby twice almost. We can act like it today.
Yeah, no, I mean, to be honest, there's so much I want to discuss about Derby, leading up. I don't know. We probably could take a whole episode, but it's just, I don't know. It's the best time of year to be in Kentucky. It's absolutely the best time.
The weather starts turning, dude. I mean, it started already, and
it has.
Hopefully it doesn't turn bad on Derby Day. There's usually a 50-50 chance, but
it is. April showers bring May flowers, they say, but sometimes, things come a little late.
One of my favorite things of Derby is Mike Rutherford. Have you seen the article he does every year of he has people write in stories of their craziest ways they got home from the Derby?
I've not seen this, but
goodness.
I can probably participate.
It is unbelievable. It's awesome.
Like I could tell you the craziest things I've seen at the Derby. The people watching is just, it's almost like being on Bourbon Street, in New Orleans, but I don't know. You're here, you're at home.
Yeah.
And Vegas, it could be Vegas Strip. There's only a few places in the world. Kentucky, I don't feel like we have that except Derby Day. Not even Oaks Day. Oaks Day is too majestic, I think. Derby Day, there is it's a true story of kind of the have and have not situation, because the infield, as a younger person, you have to go at least once.
Yeah, no, you absolutely have to, whether it's Oaks or Derby. I mean, Oaks is almost just as good as Derby if you're doing the infield.
True.
I do think the infield's lost some of its appeal now that other tickets, all the alcohol's included.
Yeah. That is another thing. I do believe that is a very nice change that they've made since they've gone to all-inclusive, or the kind of semi-all-inclusive with, I think it's beer and wine are included in most tickets. The all-inclusive is nice because you don't end up standing in line forever. The fact that you're not changing hands with the, my card or cash or what have you, it really does speed up the process, and it makes it less of a thing. They do send people out, but then I'll have them at Julep. Here you go. It's nothing. I don't know. It speeds things up, and it makes it more of a day about the horse racing.
Yeah, I haven't got to experience the all-inclusive yet. Last year, I think it was the second year they did it, but I was in Italy last year for the Derby, and this year my wife's pregnant, so she doesn't want to go, and we're going to hang out at home, and I'll bet on my Twin Spires app there.
Well, absolutely, and we will do that Derby Day, because I won't be out there Derby Day. I will be out Oaks. I'm going to Thurby, which is the silliest name in horse racing, but I'll be out there Thursday. I'll be out there Friday. Won't be out there Saturday. My wife and I will be in the sunroom at home. Got a big TV. The windows will be open. Hopefully the weather's nice. The ceiling fan will be kicking. Kids will be running around doing whatever they do. And Jen and I will be sitting there with a racing form, betting on the Twin Spires app and watching Derby coverage.
Yeah, Thursday used to be kind of the day for people from Louisville, but now it's 5-0 Tuesday.
Yeah, so... Well, originally Oaks was more the locals' day, but now with the attendance above 100,000, obviously that's not the locals' day anymore. It's become more of a week, and then Thursday became so big because locals moved from Friday to Thursday. Then Wednesday became really big, but the corporate sponsorships and corporate outings and things like that. Yeah, 5-0 Tuesday makes total sense, right? Because it's again a week of racing. The thing is, on Tuesday, you'll still see some 6-horse fields and some very small purses. But you know what? It's a day at the track. If the weather's nice, nobody's gonna care.
Have I told you the story of my parents' first time at Derby?
No.
All right, it's a pretty crazy story. They were there with 3 other couples. So it was them and 3 other couples, and they put in a 50-cent superfecta bet on the Derby. It was something like that. It came out to like a $12 total bet. After the race, they start talking to each other. They're like, wait, do we have all those horses? $28,000.
What? Didn't even know.
Yeah. And they thought, oh, this is going to be great. They're going to take us to some big room and give us some. No, they just handed them a bag of cash at one of the normal windows.
I'll tell you the craziest story I've ever experienced with Derby real quick. Cause I know we don't want to take up the whole first segment with Derby talk, but maybe we can. I don't know. So when I was at Bellarmine, I played baseball. And, Division II at the time, they're Division I now. Division II, we had to do a lot of fundraising, because number one, you're not a revenue producing sport. And really no sport, basketball maybe, is somewhat of a revenue producer at Bellarmine. So we had to do a lot of fundraising to take care of our stuff. So we worked security at Oaks and Derby. Brantley Security. You've done this? I probably shouldn't say
no, this sounds like a mess, though.
But I worked security, and this was not like I didn't have a gun, I didn't have a weapon, no pepper spray, no nothing, right? I was just a guy in
you had your
khaki,
fists.
a khaki pants and shirt, and I worked a betting mutual in the infield, right? That's where I was stationed, which really meant I sat in a folding chair for like 14 hours because you have to be there at like the crack of dawn. So I'm in there working, and the last race goes off. And all the people working the windows leave, and there's just the one guy. There's a guy who apparently the manager of that mutual that is, the person in charge of all the cash and accounting and all that. And he kind of looked like an accountant, prototypical accountant look, very, very buttoned up. And, I'm security, so I have to wait with him until they send around there's like a Brinks truck, like the armored truck that goes around and picks up all things. So 30 minutes go by, an hour go by, hour and a half goes by, 2 hours go by. They haven't came. They haven't come to get us. We don't have a radio. We don't have anything. I can't leave him. He can't leave. He's got and this is like 2003. So cash is much more prevalent. And finally, like we flag somebody down and they send somebody to come get us, but it's not a Brinks truck. It's like a minivan, like a literal minivan. And I'm waiting this entire time with this man. I have no idea how much money is in that box. But I know it's a lot. And there's, drunk people stumbling around the infield. And I'm like, at any point, somebody could come up and try to rob us. I mean, they're still in the middle of the infield at Derby, but there are drunk idiots out there. And finally, this minivan comes around. We throw the thing in the back, and like the guy like hauls it, and we make it back. And I get the guy to tell me, once we're in the truck, how he says there was $500,000 in that box. And I was like, okay, well, I wasn't scared. Thank you for not telling me. I'm a little scared now. But the most impactful thing was like, we get out of the thing. They drive us into some back room, some back area. And the guy that picked us up asked me to help him carry the box. I grab one side, I'll grab the other. And we walk into this room, and I swear it was a green box. It was like a Foot Locker. Like you've seen an old Foot Locker for like military barracks. Yeah. That's what it looked like. Wooden box. The boxes, you could not count them. There were so many. And all I keep doing in my head is going 500,000 times 20, 40, 60, 80. I'm looking around the room. It just really puts in perspective the handle. I know it's not all profit. I'm not saying Churchill Downs, whatever. They're a corporation. They make money. They're there for profit. But just looking around and thinking about the revenue generated as a business-minded person on Derby Day, incredible. Anyway, I know that took too long.
No, that's a great story. I don't know if a college volunteer should be security.
I think, like, what was I going to do? I wasn't going to radio for help. I didn't have a radio. I didn't even I had nothing. I had my Dukes.
You mentioned a little bit ago, D2, now D1. My friends, we play golf at Bellarmine. We argue, are we D1 now? Do we get to say we're D1?
You just don't need to specify that it was D2, and everybody will assume you were D1.
I'm fine being D2. I don't know if the slogan was this when you were there, but it was, I chose D2.
Oh, we didn't have that.
Yeah, that was a huge slogan.
In fairness,
when we were there,
I did have D1 offers.
I think that was the whole point of it. It was like, you could have gone D1, but you wanted more playing time, so you went D2. And another thing I remember about golf at Bellarmine, when we made the national tournament, they just gave us 1,000 tees, like for golf, and they all said, don't bet on it. Every single tee. Just don't bet on sports. They were really pushing that at the time.
Well, of course. I mean, because sports gambling has become so prevalent over the years, and like that's the last thing they want is for athletes who no NIL at the time, right? That was actually an argument for NIL was, you know, these players are cash strapped. Like some of them live below the poverty line, right? Despite going to school for free and making millions of dollars for the university, they're cash strapped and they make bad choices, and you won't have to worry so much about fixing games, gambling, and problems like that if you just pay them a little something to get them by.
Yeah.
You know. Anyway,
well, that was our Derby segment for the show. The topics we're going to cover before we cut to a few sponsors are a story from the field. We're going to talk about a couple of real estate tweets here that both of us found interesting over the week. 10 smart ways to teach kids about money through the years. Apple won an appeal against Epic Games, and a couple random things here at the end. So it's Derby Day. Everybody have fun, be safe, and we're going to cut to a couple minutes of sponsors, and we'll be back here on the Jay Pitts Show, Talk Radio 1080, real news, real talk.
welcome back, folks. It's the Jay Pitts Show. Happy Derby Day here in the Bluegrass. Segment 2. We just got done talking a little bit of Derby. We gave you some show topics. I think we're going to move on. Ryan, what you got in store for us today?
Yeah, we're going to move to one of our recurring segments that we've actually been consistent with, and that is Story from the Field. This is agents asking us questions, and for the majority of the time, Jay giving the answer. I chime in every now and then, but Jay's been through it and seen it all, and he usually has an answer for everything. So this agent said, if I have a fully executed contract with FHA financing and the sellers refuse to sign the FHA amendatory clause, what actions/recourse can be taken? I have the buyers. We're pretty early in the process, but have already had an inspection. The listing agent is telling me they have another buyer lined up who's not FHA. Probably bogus, but trying to get all my ducks in a row to see if the sellers think that's their ticket out.
Yeah. So here's the problem with the amendatory clause. And this is just your typical like jurisdictional kind of dispute, right? So contracts are governed by the state of Kentucky here anyways. You know, typically real estate is done at the state level. It's licensed. The oversight is at the state level. So the contracts are typically drawn with respect to Kentucky or whatever state you're in, you know, license law requirements. They're reviewed by counsel that represents either boards of realtors or the Kentucky Real Estate Commission itself. So you have provisions in the contract, okay, that are agreed upon by both sides. Now, here's where it becomes challenging. You have a seller who's selling a property. You have a buyer who has agreed to buy the property. There are conditions on both parties. A couple of conditions on the buyer. The buyer gets a financing contingency. They state their type of financing, typically in the contract. Okay, this type of financing is binding. They can't change it without the permission of the seller, and if they change it, there can be no detriment to the seller. So typically, your FHA financing would be disclosed up front. Okay. Some contracts include a provision stating, ours does not, some contracts include a provision where the seller certifies that they're going to execute an FHA amendatory clause if it's an FHA finance deal. Okay, that would probably solve this situation. I would presume, not having seen their contract.
That seems like something good to add in a contract.
It absolutely does. And you'll see it in a lot of places. I presume it does not exist in this one. Obviously, my answer for all of these is always go back to the contract, because what the two parties agree upon is what holds. But sometimes the contract in itself is at odds. So, buyer with financing contingency. FHA is the stated type of financing. Seller probably did not agree explicitly to execute an amendatory clause, may not have known that they were going to have to. Buyer also has an appraisal contingency. The appraisal contingency, well, the buyer doesn't. Buyer and seller have appraisal contingency. It's a contingency shared by both parties, meaning that the appraisal is handled a certain way. The amendatory clause limits the seller's rights under the appraisal contingency. It means that the property cannot sell for more than the appraised value. If the seller executes the amendatory clause prior to the appraisal coming back, okay, they're limiting their options if the appraisal comes in low. Okay, so again, jurisdictional problems here. We've got a federal agency providing financing, dictating that a seller must sign a certain form if the buyer is going to obtain that type of financing, but the seller has to give up rights under the appraisal contingency in order to do so. So this is a problem, right? This is the contract's at odds with itself here. The buyer did what they should. They disclosed their type of financing. The seller agreed to the type of financing. Maybe you could say the onus is on the seller to understand the full implications of FHA financing. Maybe. And maybe not, right? The seller agreed explicitly to one thing. What's reasonable is the seller waiting until the appraisal is received. Okay. I would say 9 out of 10 are not undervalued. Okay. That's rooted in the basis of what is market value defined as. The buyer agrees that the property is worth this. The seller agrees to accept that market value, and everybody's happy. The appraisal typically reflects that 9 out of 10 times. So 90% of the time, if the seller just waits, may delay closing slightly, may have some impact, but the seller doesn't have to give up rights, right? They will execute the document once they know it's not to their detriment, and then everybody moves forward. It's that one situation where, somebody's got nefarious purposes that poses a problem. I don't think this is the seller's way out. The seller can't, if the seller refuses to sign altogether, okay, the argument for the buyer is that the seller is in breach of contract, okay, which eliminates the contract. That's not what the buyer wants to argue if they want to close, because the contract doesn't exist once it's breached.
Yeah, I mean, you would argue that they agreed to an FHA contract in the offer, and the FHA mandatory clause is just a normal document that's a part of it.
It's pretty typical. But can you expect the seller to know what they were agreeing to? Now if they have a good agent, but are they required to have a good agent?
No.
Is their agent negligent for not? I don't know. I mean, those are tough questions to answer.
Yeah, we talked about, I think it was 2 shows ago, maybe it was the last show, but when the appraisal comes in below the agreed upon price in FHA, the buyer can back out.
Buyer can. I mean, and even if the seller is, and again, it's based on your jurisdictional contract, whatever holds for your area, but typically the buyer can just back out even if the seller is willing to reduce the price.
Yep.
So,
all right. That was Story from the Field. Let's, you got anything else on that?
No, man, that's good. I mean, these are, we got a lot of real estate agents that listen to the show, and it's important, whether they're a part of our firm or not, that agents understand how to navigate these situations.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's move on to a couple tweets that you actually sent me this week from Steve Harney.
Oh, yeah.
The first one here. Here's why I don't like using median home price. Oftentimes in real estate, you hear everybody talking about median home price, but Steve Harney has something else to say about that. So he says, people buy houses based on their monthly mortgage payment, not the price of the house. When mortgage rates go up, they have to buy a less expensive home to keep the monthly expense affordable. More or less expensive houses are selling right now, causing the median price to decline. That doesn't mean any single house lost any value. Even NAR, National Association of Realtors, who reports on median prices, realizes it's not a good index in this type of market. From NAR's methodology, changes in the composition of sales can distort price data.
Yeah, that's a direct quote from NAR. So what caught my attention here is this is a point that I make quite often. Okay, how can you argue, right, without more complete data that prices have gone down? We're simply tracking the homes that do sell. The homes that don't sell have not inherently lost value because the price that we're transacting at has changed. By the same token, prices haven't necessarily inclined, just simply because you walk into, a luxury home market, right? And the only home that has transferred in that luxury home market is the really beaten and run down one. Let's say you could pick any. I don't want to say an area, but you pick a really expensive area. Let's say that average transaction price is north of $1 million. And there's this one left behind shack of a structure over here that transacts at $500,000 shack. Okay. Did that take the $1 million home's value and reduce it? No. It just means that the homes that are transacting are less expensive. When homes are more expensive, more homes sell at lower prices. It's that simple. The same argument can be made for price increases. Median to me is distorts. And I think it's important to understand that any statistic can distort reality, and you have to take them with a lot of context.
It always seems like the statistic that distorts reality the most is always the one most used.
It is, isn't it? Gosh. Well, I think it's important to understand who Steve Harney is also.
Yeah.
He's an economist. Okay. He's founder of a company called Keeping Current Matters. And I will say he's a contrarian. Okay. And he sells. Okay. So take it with a grain of salt. He sells positivity in real estate. Right. His clients are real estate agents mostly. We subscribe to his newsletter. I follow him on Twitter. I saw this. I sent it to Ryan because I said, this is a unique perspective. I'm not saying it's not without bias. Okay. Like there is some bias there because he's certainly incentivized, right, to spread positivity. But I think he would admit that. Whereas, the regular media would not admit their implicit negative bias.
I was going to say he should definitely admit that because it is so refreshing for somebody to sell positivity over all the negativity we see just in everyday life, but especially the real estate market, what you read now.
For sure.
And
market's crashing is the most common.
Yeah. I have noticed the last couple weeks, I think we talked about this. I've seen the media narrative start to shift.
It's very much shifted.
It's starting to, the housing market's good.
It's undeniable. It's undeniable. In fact, the second tweet was about the FHA Case-Shiller price index, right? Which basically says, okay, that last month we saw an increase in prices for the first time in 6 months. Okay. But what they don't tell you is that the declines in pricing were very negligible. 0.1%, 0.2%, 0.2%, 0.3%, 0.1%. And now we're at a very negligible gain, but a gain nonetheless. So anyway, that's, I think real news.
It is real news, real talk.
All right, folks, we're going to take a break. We're going to get back to you here in a few minutes after some words from our sponsors. This is the Jay Pitts Show here on Talk Radio 1080. Real news, real talk.
Welcome back to the Jay Pitts Show, Talk Radio 1080, real news, real talk. I was just telling Jay I'll bring us back in. Not sure if that got caught, but brought us back in nonetheless.
Hey, we're here. We're here, babe. Hey, we're here.
Just call me babe.
Hey, the shoe fits. All right, what we got next, man? What we got next?
Yeah, let's talk a little bit more about one of the Steve Harney, his second tweet. We didn't quite get to it all, but we were talking about the media narratives are starting to shift around the real estate market. And here's this tweet from him. According to my research, these entities are now showing that home prices are increasing. Case-Shiller, FHFA, Fannie Mae, CoreLogic, Black Knight, Zillow Home Value Index. The last correction took almost 6 years. This one lasted about 6 months.
Yeah, I paraphrased it too much on just before the break. I will say specifically the Case-Shiller, he has another tweet that I didn't send you. I don't know if you saw that, if you went to his account, where it shows the percentage increase in decline over the last 12 months. But I think this tells the story also because it's not just one outlet. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 outlets reporting home price increases. And I mean, I think it's a little, it's maybe a little aggressive on the last correction took almost 6 years. This one lasted 6 months. I don't know that we're not in for future price declines as they are measured this way. But, nonetheless, it has been a soft, you hear people talking about the economy and soft landings and things like that. The real estate market has certainly had a soft landing. I think, it also just depends on who you're talking to. If you're talking to, a lot of the real estate agents that got in the business the last few years that have had a hard time maintaining a livable income, that have had to look elsewhere. I mean, look, there are fewer transactions. Don't get me wrong. But the best are getting better. That's the truth. And, I'm proud to say the majority of our organization is in that latter group.
Yeah, that last sentence he threw on that tweet The last correction took 6 years. This one about 6 months. That's that selling positivity you were talking about.
For sure.
I mean, what a great line.
Dude, he is in the business of making memes for real estate agents to share on their social media. Like, how many people can you get at $29 a month to subscribe to get my memes to put on their Instagram? I mean, he's got to have a million subscribers.
Yeah, pretty impressive.
Yeah, pretty impressive.
All right, we'll move on to the next part of the show. As I've talked about, I'm having a kid here in August, and I do read a lot of finance stuff lately, and I believe my algorithms on all my news networks are starting to feed me those things together. So what we're going to talk about next is 10 smart ways to teach kids about money through the years. You have a few kids, Jay. I'm interested to know what you think about these or if you've started doing any of them. But before we get going, this is from CNBC, Sharon Epperson, and there's a few key points first. The first one, only 8 U.S. states require high school students to take a semester of personal finance education before graduation, while 10 or more are set to implement similar requirements soon. Found that shocking.
Yeah. I mean, personal finance has always been a thing that people have called for in basic education. I mean, it's like, why are we doing geometry and not basic finance? I think there's something to that. I mean, not that geometry is not valuable, but like how to, calculate the surface area of a, isosceles triangle is maybe slightly less important in real life.
Yeah, Alex Todd, Elizabethtown high school teacher. He was my assistant high school basketball coach when I was there, and he taught a finance class, and he's been talking to the Kentucky government and state legislator about this a lot over the last few years. So, I think it's very important and pretty cool. But let's get into the 10 ways that she talks about here. So ages 5 to 9, she breaks it down into ages and then gives you the steps. So the first step, age 5 to 9, have frequent money talks. Start to introduce some basic concepts such as what money is used for, how we earn it, and how much items cost when children are in kindergarten or even earlier.
Absolutely agree. Definitely do that. In fact, they go on to talk about Greenlight. They quote the director of education at Greenlight. Greenlight is something that we looked into. We actually even signed up at one point. We never did ultimately execute.
Which it says Greenlight's a banking and investing app for kids and teens.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And it's cool. It gives them a debit card. Not trying to, it allows them to make online purchases with permissions from parents, things like that. It allows them to start participating in the way the world works using money in a safe way. And I like that. To me, we just got busy and we never got there. I will say, kind of with respect to all of this, I have a 5-year-old. Okay. I have a 10-year-old. My 10-year-old is incredibly sharp. I'm not saying my 5-year-old isn't. She absolutely is. It remains to be seen how interested she is in this kind of thing. My 10-year-old reads at a 10th grade level. So it's like he is very sharp and very aware. And I've discussed scanning the list, most of these things with him, like all the way up. But haven't really gotten much into it with my other 2 yet. But I do know that they'll follow, what we do with him. So I think frequent money talks is really important. One thing that we have done with my daughter, she's in Girl Scouts. She just sold like 1,500 boxes of Girl Scouts, Girl Scout cookies, like sales, person to person, communication, asking for a sale, having the self-confidence to approach people and try to help them understand good customer service, things like that. That's not quite money and finance, but it is business. So I think those two kind of go hand in hand.
Yeah, that's amazing. I actually saw a video on TikTok this week, and it was a mom filming her kid, and he had a presentation he made. Kid's probably 9 or 10, and he asked his mom, how much money do you spend on my birthday and Christmas gifts? And I think it was $100 for each or something like that. He said, well, if we take my birthday and Christmas gifts and you just give me cash for that for the next 8 years right now and invest it, I can have this much money for college later.
Wow.
Yeah.
Kids are really amazing sometimes. I will tell you, Luke Andrews, another agent of ours, another guy from E-Town that I grew up around anyway. When his kids want things, he makes them make a presentation. They literally like stream a PowerPoint deck to the TV in the living room and his kids deliver a sales presentation. I thought that was pretty impressive.
Let me tell you, knowing Luke, that does not surprise me at all.
It doesn't, does it? No, good, incredible dad. Luke is an incredible dad.
He needs to start filming those.
Dude, it would go viral.
Oh,
sure.
Absolutely. Or just save them for later.
There you go.
But, all right, number 2 on this list, discuss needs versus wants.
Yes, agreed entirely. Needs versus wants, priorities, responsibilities versus privileges. These are all things that I think you need to be discussing with your children, and all those kind of go hand in hand. What do you need versus what do you want? Okay, what do we take care of first? What are your priorities? What must you take care of in terms of your responsibilities versus your privileges? All that goes hand in hand. Agreed. I've done this with my 3-year-old is no, but my 5 and my 10 definitely.
Everything's a need or a want when you're 3.
Exactly.
Or a need, sorry.
No, every want is a need.
Yeah. All right. And let's go to number 3. So this is ages 10 to 14. Discuss ways to earn money. Help your child come up with ways to make money so they can start saving toward their goal.
Yeah. So I even went a step further on this one. With my 10-year-old, he wanted a certain amount of money to do a certain thing. So I told him he needed to earn it, right? Instead of giving him chores and like pricing out the chores, what I did, I took it a step further. I said, well, what can you do? He said, well, I can help in the yard. Okay, fantastic. We need to weed the mulch. We need to trim the hedges. We need to pick up sticks from, the storm last week. We need to dispose of them, things like that. So I went a step further and I said, okay, how much are you going to charge to do that? And it blew his mind at first. So I made him bid his job. Well, and then when he started working and he had a hard time and it became untenable, right? So like he bid the job at, let's say $8 an hour, $10 an hour, whatever. Probably $10 an hour because I wanted to keep the math simple and it was going to be like, 2 hours worth of work in my head. He'd get $20 for it. He'd come back. Well, first he came back to me and said, well, Dad, the front yard's way harder than the backyard. There's a lot more mulch beds. And I was like, well, yeah, you're right. I said, okay, do you want to readjust your bid? He said, yeah, I want to bid this for the front and this for the back. Okay, fantastic. We'll separate it. And he went back and then it took too long. And he's like, Dad, it's going to take forever. This is not worth doing. And I said, okay, well, it sounds like to me like you need help. He's like, great, will you help me? And I said, well, yeah, I'll help you. What do you pay me? And so he's like, well, I got to pay you? And I said, well, of course, that's how business works. You need employees. You have to pay for your help. So he's like, well, I can't afford to pay you out of this. I said, well, it sounds to me like you need to adjust your bid. And so he adjusted his bid and then he paid me to help him. And we did the job together. And yeah, I did most of the work, but
I thought you were going to tell me you were sending him off to recruit his siblings.
No, because his 5-year-old sister wasn't going to do anything, and his 3-year-old brother, no shot.
Just would have been bossing around.
But he did come back to me again, and he needed additional tools. And I said, well, what money do you have to invest in your business for your tools? He said, well, I don't have any. I said, okay, well, I'll loan you the money. So then I bought him the tools, and he had supplies. He needed contractor trash bags, and so I bought him, and he paid me for the materials.
Yeah, Weston Faulkner, another agent on the team, mm-hmm. He's doing this with his son. I think it's every Wednesday they're cutting grass in St. Matthew's neighborhood.
Yeah,
seeing them out there grinding is pretty cool to see.
No, it's awesome to see, and his little boy is a great kid. Preston, he and Preston have played ball together. So
nice.
No, discuss ways to earn money is incredibly important.
Cool. Well, we have a few more of these, but we're going to cut to a couple sponsors, and we'll be back on the Jay Pitts Show, Talk Radio 1080, Real News, Real Talk.
And we're back, folks. Welcome back to the Jay Pitts Show. Talk Radio 1080, Real News, Real Talk. We're going to keep this conversation going, Ryan, man. I like this. I like talking about kids and money because I think there's really no more valuable parental activity than helping your kids learn how to eventually function, in today's world, whether it be, tried and true or new age kind of concepts. I think it's important that they understand that. So we talked about discussing ways to earn money with your 10 to 14-year-olds. The next one on the list is following a budget for favorite grocery items. I don't really go there. Frankly, I think that may be getting it. I want my kids to understand that it is my responsibility to provide for them, right? It is their responsibility to honor my efforts. Right. So, I'm not going to let them get things that they shouldn't have, but within reason, like, if they want a specific, snack or drink or something, I'm not going to make them pay for that. I'd rather make them I'd rather make them save up and pay for things that are more important to them than just like food.
So if you give kids free reign on grocery items, there's no
man.
telling.
Yeah, you'd be eating Pop-Tarts for dinner. But, the next one I think is incredibly important. Choose a charity and give. I think that is incredibly important. That's something that we've been very involved with our kids. My wife is very passionate about charity, not that I'm not, but she worked in nonprofit. Charity and giving is something that is incredibly important. I think that it's a little easier. I'm more top line focused and it generating the revenue, and it takes a lot of my focus and energy. And we've talked in past episodes about how laser focused I am about certain things and the way I approach them. She helps me balance and make time for things like this, both from an effort standpoint and using your money to support good causes. We've always involved our children. We always do the angel tree every year. My kids go with us to buy. We always adopt at least one child from the angel tree that is their age and their gender. And so they are shopping for items that are similar to things they need and want to give to someone who's less fortunate. We make that theirs. I mean, they literally walk around the store with the card and find the things.
They probably love it too.
They enjoy it. They really do. My oldest is, my 10-year-old has gone with us to deliver the items, right? To just see the impact of how much is given through the angel tree. And there've been other things that we've done. We raise money, for a lot of different things. They understand Children's Miracle Network being one of our, partner charities. They know the amount that we've raised. They understand the amount. I'm not going to say it, but it's a pretty big number. I was the number one agent in Remax for the state of Kentucky in giving to Children's Miracle Network last year. My kids understand that, right? And I think it's really important. We've done more effort because money doesn't pass through their hands a lot, right? But we've had the moments where it's really cute, where it's, like our little daughter will get like $5 for her birthday, and she'll say, "Daddy, I want to give this to a kid that needs it more." And those are the moments that help you understand that your kids are really getting it, right? And it warms your heart a lot.
Yeah, that's amazing, man. And you started the golf scramble.
Yeah,
last year too.
That was a CMN. That was a CMN benefit. Raised over. I mean, I will say we
talk about that relationship with Remax.
Yeah, so CMN, Children's Miracle Network, is a national partner. They have a Louisville chapter that Norton's Children's Hospitals is affiliated with CMN here locally. So our dollars stay local and go to Norton's. I will say that just in the golf scramble alone, we raised north of $25,000 for Children's Miracle Network. That's one event. We give a portion of our closings. We do a concert, a summer concert, where our agents, very talented agents, are musically gifted, that they perform, and we do band-led karaoke at $100 a song, and just a really fun event, right? We're going to do that again this summer, so good stuff there. I mean, charity is very important to understanding finance, because using your fortune, using your favor to make an impact on others that are less fortunate, I think is incredibly important. And it's an important responsibility of success.
Yeah, I'm playing in that scramble this year. I had to miss it last year, but going for the win this year.
You might have it, man. You might have it. The next one, help your team buy stocks, not just brands. I haven't really gotten there, but I have tried to educate my son, my 10-year-old, who is capable of understanding some of these things, how businesses work, right? He sees commercials. He sees marketing. He understands what a share of stock is and what public ownership in companies is. He understands that dad's companies, mom and dad's companies, are not public. We're private. We are affiliated with a public company in Remax, but you can't buy stock in our companies on the market. He knows that you can go buy a stock of Procter & Gamble. In fact, I can thank my parents for this, because one thing they did when each of my children were born, they bought them a lump sum of stock at birth, okay, in an account. And they do the same amount every year on their birthday. And the kids have some role in picking the stock. And so my 10-year-old now, with the things he likes, the companies he feels like are strong, he can make suggestions as to which company stock. And if he picks one that is like ripe for a decline, and the stockbroker says, no, probably not a good idea, we try to educate him on why. So I think that's kind of important. He doesn't buy stock in any other way, but this is a cool way to educate it in lieu of.
Yeah, you talked about in a previous episode we did how you bought stock for all of them at very young age, when they were, I guess maybe when they were born.
Oh, my daughter.
Yeah.
And she bought Apple.
Do they know what stock they have? Have you?
They do. I don't know that they retain all that knowledge. Everybody knows that Evie has Apple because she's crushing everybody because she bought Apple at the right time and it like split and doubled. So, anyway, I tell you one thing that I want to add to this, okay, that I think is a credible idea that's not here, okay? And I really don't. I mean, encourage to save and invest, great ideas, create a budget, explain how taxes work, help your adult child get a credit card and use it responsibly. There's all sorts of things, right, that my father did for me, co-signed a credit card. He put me on a car note. Wasn't even my car. I turned 18. He borrowed money to buy a car. He put me on it to build my credit. He co-signed my first mortgage note with me. You know, things like that are really impactful for a child, especially an adult child. There's a lot of options. But there's one thing that I think very few people do, and I have yet to make time for it, but I have an S corp. I want to make my kids employees in my S corp. Do you know, Ryan, that you can contribute? Now, I'll disclaim, talk to a tax professional and an investment advisor before you do this. But do you know, as an S corp, you can make your kids employees. You can give them literal jobs that they have to complete. You can pay them, and if you pay them no more than the floor for federal income tax, that you can take all of their income and move it straight to a Roth IRA, and that money is tax free forever.
I did. Is it at $15,000? Is that the amount?
I don't know what the limit is, but yeah, something in that neighborhood. Now, you don't have to pay them that much. You just have to pay them less than that amount. At least stay under that amount. But they have to have a legitimate job. You just can't just pay them for being your kid.
Which I'm sure a lot of people do it, and their kids don't have legitimate jobs.
But when they get audited, it's kind of hard to justify. You know, I'm gonna have Preston audit my books. Apparently.
Well, we were just talking about Apple. We'll finish up with this. So Apple won an appeal in the App Store battle with Epic Games. So this has been going on for a while. And the reason I brought this up, it's something, my company, Simba, we've had to deal with. But here's what the article says. The battle between Apple and Epic Games began when Epic circumvented App Store policies and added a direct payment option to Fortnite for iPhone. Here's a recap of where we stood in the Epic versus Apple legal battle prior to today's decision. Epic Games sued Apple for not allowing it to use its own payment platform instead of in-app purchases through the App Store, with Apple taking a 30% cut. So for people out there listening, if you don't know this, if you're making payments through the app you use, doesn't matter what company it is, through the App Store, they have to give Apple 30% of that revenue. So what they ended up doing, the court ruled that Apple must allow developers to steer app users to external payment platforms. So that's what our app's done, Simba. But before this, you weren't able to do this. You had to offer in-app purchases, and really that's it. So think of Apple owns 30% of every company in the App Store, basically.
Oh, for sure. I mean, that's like usury. I mean, I hate to say that. I don't want to put Apple down, but I mean, that's like 30% is like, it's crazy. It's crazy. That's mafia math is what that is. Like, how do you pay 30% of revenue on every sale through your chief distribution channel, Ryan, at Simba?
You do it because you have to.
You do it because you have to.
But luckily now you can direct people off of your app to pay. So like we use Stripe, for example.
Yeah, of course.
So we drive users there now, but still probably half of our paying users go through the Apple App Store, and we lose 30% of that revenue every time they do that.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what I feel about it. I appreciate Apple for everything they've done in bringing, the iPhone and the technology and the ecosystem. And we've talked about it on past episodes. I'm not an Android user. I will not be an Android user, and that got a lot of grief. I got a lot of grief for that. But there's, I don't know, something just gets a little bit crazy there. All right, real quick before we go. All right, I'm sitting there looking at 2023 Derby hopefuls. Forte. Is it Forte Violence or Forte? Just Forte. Yeah, I don't know, man. Disarm, Reincarnate. Do we want to venture a guess?
Let's just say a random number because I haven't looked at it.
Okay, we're going to call a number. I'll tell you what, I'm going to make a prediction. We're going to have a Triple Crown winner this year.
Ooh, okay.
How about that?
Let me look at the names real quick.
There you go.
I'll go Hit Show. It's a good name.
Hit show is the never mind, I'm not going to go there. I have to forget this is not a podcast only show anymore. That I was going somewhere else with that mentally. I'm sure you can probably imagine. Anyway, that's all we got, folks, for here for the J Pitch Show on Derby Day 2023. We appreciate you tuning in. As always, check us back here every Saturday morning. Once again, for Ryan Harris, I'm your host, Jay Pitts. The Jay Pitts Show on Talk Radio 1080, Real News, Real Talk. We'll see you next week.